Hello, this video reviews the case Patients Like Me using social network health data to improve patient care. Today, a variety of social media tools are used to improve the processes and outcomes of healthcare delivery. Social networks are avidly used by all stakeholders in a range of capacities. As examples, physicians connect with colleagues and peers to share medical knowledge and best practices. Payers engage with members to keep them informed of wellness programs and promote healthier lifestyles. Pharmaceutical and device manufacturers use social media to educate, for example, offer disease-specific information. They also use social media to market products, such as sharing press releases on new products and clinical trial results. Another use is to connect with customers, such as creating patient communities and support groups. Finally, pharmaceutical and device manufacturers use social media to promote clinical trial enrollment. Academic institutions such as Duke University's DCRI, which stands for Duke Clinical Research Institute, for example, are active on Twitter and other social networks. Furthermore, regulatory entities such as the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, may engage with consumers on product recalls or for pandemic preparations. Finally, patients can use social media to renew prescriptions, make online appointments, connect with healthcare professionals or HCPs to manage their condition, and participate in virtual communities or networks. These tools are changing the way patients, consumers, and organizations communicate online. What began as in-person group meetings between patients with the same condition have evolved into 24-hour online patient groups, complementing the patient-doctor relationship with one-to-many and many-to-many interactions between patients and doctors, doctors and other doctors, and patients with other patients. Social networks such as Patients Like Me, linking patients and caregivers within and across conditions, are growing at a rapid pace. Consumers can track their condition, share personal stories, learn from other patients' experiences, and obtain a prognosis in cases where companies leverage data analytics to make predictions based on huge amounts of patient-generated health data, such as patient-reported outcomes, or PROs. There is a double benefit. First, patients derive emotional support from peers with similar symptoms or conditions. Second, the platform allows data pooling across patients as the basis for population-level claims about health progression and/or interventions. However, enthusiasm for online networks targeting patients has been met with caution by physicians and regulators. Some physicians are wary of such platforms for fear of misinterpretation and misdiagnosis. For others, issues of privacy arise, particularly when Patients Like Me shares PROs with medical technology manufacturers that want to integrate patient behavior and experiences into research and development, or R&D. Empowering patients and giving them a voice in designing and improving care are at the core of Patients Like Me's value proposition, but several hurdles have to be overcome. Patients Like Me is using patient-generated data to drive evidence-based decisions about R&D and care delivery. First, delivering value to patients. It's important to understand Patient Like Me's value proposition. It is a multi-sided platform that caters to patients as well as institutional and industry stakeholders across the health sector. The company's goal is to create value for patients by helping them manage their condition, providing a social support network, and using analytics to improve drug research and discovery. On the care management front, patients are able to compare symptoms, treatments, and experiences with their peers, as well as track and learn about factors that impact their health over time. As an online patient network, Patients Like Me offers a social dimension where patients can provide and obtain support from other members on the website. Third, the company uses analytics to process patient population data for use in clinical trials, outcome measurement research, as well as tracking real-world outcomes to inform drug effectiveness and patient behavior. This is done through independent research as well as partnerships with external clients. A study of patients with chronic conditions found that most are willing to share health information to help improve care. In response to 2 surveys conducted by Patients Like Me of its own members and Consumer Reports Research, a consumer group representative of the U.S. population, for a study by the Institute of Medicine, or IOM, on the Patients Like Me side, 94% were willing to share data to help other patients. 92% were willing to share to improve researchers' knowledge of the disease. 59% said that health data collected outside of the social network was used to improve care of future patients with a similar condition, whereas 91% said that this was true for data collected on Patients Like Me. Think about types of members likely to join and use the Patients Like Me platform. Compared to the general population, Patients Like Me's users were slightly more likely to be female, a few years younger, slightly more likely to be white, and slightly more likely to have a higher level of education. There were relatively few seniors aged 75 and above using the site. The need for internet access meant that early users were more likely to be from wealthier, more educated households. Over time, these biases were diminishing as the digital divide narrows. Most organic growth has been in conditions that affect the day-to-day lives of people, particularly where they can do something about it. Conditions such as progressive supranuclear palsy, or PSP, in which patients rapidly lose cognitive function, make interactions difficult given the reliance on usernames, passwords, and complex medical information, so caregivers have to be relied upon for accurate data entry. While the potential for value creation is vast, there are also problems. The benefits of online networks in educating patients, promoting public health programs, and enabling communication with a mass audience must be measured against the potential risks. The dissemination of inaccurate information, violation of patient privacy, and legal issues. Consider, for example, the Ebola scare in 2014. Soon after the first case of Ebola was diagnosed on September 30, 2014, Twitter mentions of the virus increased from 100 per minute to 6,000. Potential cases in Newark, Miami Beach, and Washington, D.C. tested negative, but people continued to believe and communicate that the disease could spread through air, water, and food. Iowa's Department of Public Health had to publish a statement to refute rumors that Ebola had arrived in the state. Second, managing stakeholders and challenges to a sustainable business model. Patients Like Me is essentially a dual platform. On one side, the company manages the individual interactions to ensure patients are engaged, contribute data, and receive information to manage their condition. On the other, it shares de-identified longitudinal patient data with external partners that can use the information to better understand products and diseases. When Patients Like Me launched in the early 2000s, the first hurdle was to introduce industry partners to take patient-generated health data seriously. Experience showed that pharmaceutical firms traditionally did not engage with patients until drugs were launched in the market. Over time, however, they acknowledged the importance of patient-generated data and gradually incorporated it into R&D, although the infrastructure to make long-term commitments is limited, and there tends to be a high degree of heterogeneity across the scope and depth of collaborations. Each of these diverse partnerships has led to interesting learnings for Patients Like Me. The first was with UBC, a Belgium-based biopharmaceutical firm in 2010, designed to better understand needs and experiences of patients with epilepsy. The two companies joined forces to create a free online patient community to capture real-world data on treatments and symptoms, as well as seizure type, frequency, and severity. Also in 2010, Patients Like Me built an organ transplant community with Novartis for people who had received heart, lung, liver, and kidney transplants. The platform allowed organ recipients to monitor and share their progress and address post-surgery issues such as organ rejection or adherence to medication, with the goal of advancing research on the experience of living with a new organ. Data showed that people were engaged online when they were on a wait list for an organ transplant, but as they received the organ and regained their health, they became less active online. Patients Like Me realized that sick patients were very focused on improving their care, but when they got better, they did not want to think about their condition. In 2011, Patients Like Me worked with Merck to build a community around psoriasis to test how patient-generated health data could guide drug development. After 1 year, membership was lower than anticipated, making it difficult to run effective analyses. It was suspected that people living with psoriasis were, for the most part, much less affected by their condition than patients with more serious conditions such as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or ALS or cancer, and so did not feel motivated to spend the time required to log their experiences systematically. In 2015, Merck tapped into Patients Like Me to do a pre-market study on insomnia. According to Tim Fitzgerald, a director in Merck's Center for Observational and Real-World Evidence, quote, "I did this project prior to launch with the idea to try to get a gauge on what is working, what is not working with the generic medications, to get an idea of what are patients saying about the drugs as far as their satisfaction, and then get into what are their sleep outcomes." Close quote. Data analysis of 90,000 insomnia patients revealed that even those who were satisfied with their sleep medication still had sleep problems. The drug's benefits declined over time, and while they worked in helping people fall asleep, they didn't keep them from waking up at night. Data from Patients Like Me helped Merck show that the value proposition of their drug, Belsomra, addressed some of these issues and that it was designed to help people sleep the whole night. This helped with Merck's marketing strategy for the drug. Patients Like Me collaborated with a biotechnology firm, Biogen, to use Fitbit One activity trackers to track mobility data among multiple sclerosis or MS patients. The study was designed to assess the feasibility of using a device to track their activity when outside the doctor's office. A survey found that over 80% of the 191 respondents from the 241-person sample reported the device was easy to use and would continue using it. 68% believed that the device was useful in managing MS. As Patients Like Me membership grew and it collected more data, it set up new partnerships with academic and regulatory stakeholders, such as the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, or RWJF, and the FDA more proactively involving improving performance measures and patient monitoring. Beginning in 2013, Patients Like Me received grants totaling $4.9 million from the RWJF to launch an open research platform for the development of patient-centered health outcome measures to assess quality of life. Existing outcome measurement tools such as SF36 are perceived as dated with limited focus on patient needs and ability to adapt or iterate. Instead of using clinical settings, researchers and clinicians can use the Open Research Exchange, or ORE, for free to develop new measurements, assess them across Patients Like Me's members, who provide real-time feedback on whether the measures are relevant to their experience, and export data for analysis. According to a patient-generated health data expert, for example, the existing measures to assess suicidal tendencies are over 30 years old. To develop a new drug which could measurably reset a person's state of mind in 30 minutes would take 4 to 7 years to develop. Tools such as ORE have the potential to reduce the measurement time significantly. On the regulatory front, Patients Like Me teamed up with the FDA in 2016 to see how patient-generated data could help identify the risks and benefits of therapies early on. While manufacturers are obliged to provide the FDA with post-approval drug safety reports, HCPs and patients can send reports directly to the FDA but are not obliged to communicate drug safety issues. Patients Like Me's data is different from that the FDA receives in that it is sourced directly by patients and provides nuanced insight into drug tolerance, adherence, and quality of life. It is important to emphasize that these collaborations are possible because patients trust Patients Like Me with their data and the way it is used to inform healthcare research and delivery. 80% of its members reportedly trust Patients Like Me with their data, compared to Google and Facebook, who average 8 to 10%. Maintaining that trust is important for Patients Like Me so that patients continue to contribute data, which is used to conduct internal research and sold to companies to inform research and product development. Hence, ensuring value for patients and transparency are top priorities. With the rapid growth of the Internet of Things and social media, competition is rising. Hence, PatientsLikeMe closely follows its direct and indirect competitors. As a multi-sided and multi-condition platform covering over 2,500 conditions, it has amassed 450,000 members since launching in 2006 and generates revenue through partnerships with pharmaceutical firms, academic institutions, regulators, and research consortiums. It not only competes with other multi-sided platforms such as Health Unlocked, but also commercial companies, other patient groups, as well as single and rare disease communities that have different revenue models and occupy different niches. 23andMe is a genomics and biotechnology company that provides direct-to-consumer personal genetic testing. Patient advocacy groups such as the National Cancer Institute have an Office of Advocacy Relations. Patients have representation on clinical trial and grant review committees. Others directly fund and help design clinical trials. The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, or CFF, established the venture philanthropy model by funding early-stage drug development with for-profit pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies, as manufacturers were focused on developing the next blockbuster drug and had little interest in rare diseases in the late 1990s. While most nonprofit disease groups were focused on academic and medical research, the foundation invested $40 million with Aurora Biosciences, which was eventually acquired by Vertex Pharmaceuticals, in 2000 to, quote, correct the core genetic defect in people with CF, close quote. In January 2012, the FDA approved the first drug, ivacaftor, registered under the trademark Alleviating, which was originally developed by Aurora Biosciences to treat CF. In 2014, the foundation sold its royalty rights for CF treatments for $3.3 billion, and the funds are being used for developing new life-saving therapies. Orphan drugs targeting rare diseases accounted for about 1 in 3 FDA approvals in 2015. Investors are increasingly drawn to their low-volume and high-margin model, with global sales expected to grow 11% per year, reaching $176 billion in 2020. The third theme in this case concerns opportunities and risks of data analytics in clinical settings. Pressures to reduce costs and improve care quality are driving a shift away from the fee-for-service reimbursement model towards value-based care. Tools such as predictive analytics and machine learning show potential for using patient-sourced real-world data in prevention, early detection, targeted treatments, and ultimately in improving health outcomes. Clinical trials are one area where these benefits can be realized. Access to large amounts of patient-generated health data shows promise in helping researchers identify the right subjects for their clinical studies and in drawing quicker and statistically sound conclusions through crowdsourcing clinical studies. In 2011, PatientsLikeMe facilitated an observational study to refute a small Italian study that concluded with the drug lithium could slow the advancement of ALS. The idea for the study came from patients after some members of the site suggested sharing their experiences with the drug in an online spreadsheet to test whether it was working. PatientsLikeMe decided to conduct more rigorous tests to improve the chances of getting a valid result. At 1 year of treatment, it was apparent that lithium had no effect on disease progression. Dr. Richard Bedlack, Associate Professor of Medicine Neurology at Duke University and Director of the Duke ALS Clinic, is leading a small study with 50 participants to examine ALS reversals, where patients report an unexpected improvement in their motor functions. It is hypothesized that this might be attributable to a supplement, Lunasin, found in soy and grains, which appears to have a range of potential health benefits. Dr. Bedlack grew curious after a patient's positive experience with Lunasin, but due to lack of appropriate funds, he used historical background data from patients to identify and recruit subjects. This small study was launched in 2016, and patients are taking Lunasin and will remain under observation for 1 year. The study protocol is made available online for patients who might want to purchase the supplement on their own and join the second arm of the trial. Some research experts, however, believe that social network trials such as these are not likely to replace traditional blind-sided randomized control trials, but the gold standard for generating evidence is time-consuming and new models are needed. Possibilities for knowledge creation and healthcare improvements, however, must be balanced against issues of data misinterpretation, security, and privacy. While statistical tools and algorithms have the potential to hasten the development of therapeutics, the data must be interpreted with caution. Professor John Ioannidis of Stanford University, known for his work in meta-research, warns of interpreting biased studies in the name of evidence-based medicine. In addition to clinical evidence sometimes being used as an advertising tool by industry, he emphasized that bias exists in studies and that conducting systematic reviews and meta-analyses of these studies retrospectively further enhances the problem, since these are likely to have followed different protocols and are of varying quality. Initiatives such as PRISMA, promoting transparent reporting of systematic reviews and meta-analyses, as well as AllTrials, which partners with health organizations and pharmaceutical companies to publish clinical trial results, are seen as steps in the right direction. Data privacy is another issue, particularly given PatientsLikeMe's openness philosophy. Its leaders are repeatedly asked about how they validate their patient data and ensure privacy when sharing it with client partners. As an example, a pulmonologist diagnoses a patient with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF, but an IPF expert will not believe it until he or she makes the diagnosis. Different levels of scientific rigor add another dimension of complexity. If a patient claims that they have breast cancer, they are very likely to have it. If a patient states that they have post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, what is the level of confidence there? There is no test for PTSD, and several symptom combinations can lead to this condition. In these cases, data may be pulled from other sources. To alleviate some of these concerns, PatientsLikeMe partnered with IMS Health to conduct a study on MS. PatientsLikeMe contacted over 600 patients asking for their details, such as full name and address. This data was then compared against insurance claims data, and there was a 95% match. It was suggested that the remaining 5% of the data may have belonged to the Veterans Affairs System or had incorrect records. Offering openness in a market where privacy is a dominant paradigm is no easy task. The NHS, for example, terminated its Care Data project, which aimed to input, quote, extra anonymized patient data from GPs to a central database held by the Health and Social Care Information Center, close quote. The program was interrupted in 2013 after criticism that it was being pursued without clarifying the implications for highly sensitive patient records. Other issues also surfaced as time progressed. The education campaign failed to communicate the risks of sharing data, and the program was paused twice in February 2014 and June 2015 prior to the final closing date. PatientsLikeMe has a security feature in the system in case members try to extract their data or input data to influence certain decisions. The company also looks for unrealistic data, though this tool is used with caution. ALS patients, for example, take 200 milligrams of a drug per day, but some patients were entering 300 milligrams in the database. Upon contacting those patients, PatientsLikeMe learned that they were pregnant women or mothers with ALS who were prescribed a high dose by their physicians for medical reasons. Potential challenges. While PatientsLikeMe boasts a network of 450,000 members since it launched in 2004, some question why the company has not acquired more members. As one of the first healthcare-focused social networks, PatientsLikeMe has had to carve its own path, deciding which patient data to collect, running analytics and presenting information back to the patient, identifying how to use data to ensure patients' needs and voices are met, as well as influencing industry and institutional partners to use patient-generated health data in an impactful way. The company believes it can have an impact across the entire healthcare continuum, not just pharmaceutical firms or payers, if the information is organized in the right way and informatics is applied correctly. It works closely with providers, who remain a priority with the evolving business model for care provisioning. Informatics can be used to remotely monitor patients, potentially reducing unnecessary hospital visits. It emphasizes that if one can remotely monitor patients' holistic health through wearables and sensors, smart analytics can be used to share the data with clinical teams. This, however, requires Patients Like Me to tackle several issues. The company must strike a balance between building a transformative capability for the ecosystem, including other businesses and sectors, and building specific offerings or products that deliver value directly to patients. Value is optimized for all stakeholders in the former, but revenue pressure and business pragmatism pulls the company to the latter. Managing this trade-off while ensuring that patients continue to appropriate proportional value as the company grows continues to be a challenge. Based on Patients Like Me's experience, industry partners have the appetite for incorporating patient-generated health data into their core operating processes, but issues remain. The ecosystem lacks the maturity needed to use the vast amounts of data in making healthcare R&D more patient-focused. What should be Patients Like Me's strategy when they are a market maker? How should the company help the market mature? How can it attract investors to raise funds, particularly when investors want to know the revenue model, as well as whether it is repeatable, predictable, and renewable? Thanks for watching.